argue that there are both opportunities and challenges, but unfortunately, there are more challenges than opportunities. In terms of opportunities, you have the possibility to produce a clean slate in the relationship. Afghanistan has been the source of a lot of tensions in the U.S. Pakistan relationship over the last nearly 20 years. So there's an opportunity to move beyond that and get a fresh start. There are a number of major shared global threats and concerns that are of interest of both the U.S. government and the Pakistani government, things like climate change, things like cyber threats, things like that. So hypothetically, there's a lot of grounds for cooperation in new areas that have been under engaged by both the U.S. and Pakistan. But unfortunately, there are just so many constraints to this relationship. Afghanistan has been the anchor for U.S.-Pakistan relations, for better or worse, for such a long time. Afghanistan was a source of both cooperation and confrontation for the relationship. It's moving into the rearview mirror, but I think it's going to be very difficult for the two sides to figure out what the new anchor for the relationship should be. Pakistan, of course, wants there to be a new focus on trade and investment, but the U.S. prefers to emphasize trade and investment in investment environments that it's more comfortable with than it is in Pakistan. And I think that the geopolitical state of play does not advantage U.S.-Pakistan relations, and particularly it does not advantage an expansion of U.S.-Pakistan relations into broader areas beyond Afghanistan and beyond security. The very simple reality that the U.S. has such a strong relationship with India and Pakistan has such a strong relationship with China, that simply doesn't add up. It's almost like trying to square a policy circle to say that you could get this U.S.-Pakistan relationship to work when the U.S. has a fast, deepening relationship with Pakistan's top rival, and Pakistan has a deep alliance that is only getting stronger with America's top rival. So it's going to be very difficult to get around that. And I think the challenge, and this is a challenge, is to figure out how to transcend that geopolitical reality. I think it'll constrain broader cooperation, but I still think that the two sides can find some space, even if limited, to work together within those constraints. Given that China and really U.S.-China rivalry is going to be, I think, the core driver of U.S. foreign policy in the Biden era, as it was during much of the Trump era, I think that that's going to just make it difficult for the U.S. to think outside the box in terms of how to broaden relations with Pakistan. You have a series of flashpoints, one of them being, for example, the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, which is basically the Pakistan component of China's Belt and Road Initiative. This is something that the Trump administration had come out, was very critical of, and the Biden administration has been quieter, but clearly finds it to be a constraint. And this is another reason why I think it'll be difficult for the U.S. and Pakistan to scale up their trade and business and investment relations. China really has such a foothold in the investment climate and the investment market in Pakistan just because of all of these investments in the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. But to look at this from a happier side, for sure, I do see some opportunities. I actually look at Afghanistan. We're talking about how the U.S. and Pakistan are moving away from the Afghanistan lens, but Afghanistan's not going to go away so quickly. I actually see Afghanistan as one of the few areas where the U.S. and Pakistan are actually well served by the China factor, in that the U.S., Pakistan, and China certainly don't agree on a lot of things in Afghanistan, but broadly speaking, they all share an interest in a more stable Afghanistan, and they all share an interest in a peace process leading to a more stable Afghanistan. So I think that here's an area where the triangle can actually function in a healthy way, in the sense that the three countries can cooperate in diplomatic efforts to advance the peace process. I also see climate change potentially, this is a bit trickier, but climate change is another area. The U.S. has said, the Biden administration has stated very emphatically that it will cooperate with China in areas where it makes sense to do so. And climate change mitigation is one of those areas for sure. The U.S. wants to be in a position where it can negotiate climate change issues with China. Here is an area where I think Pakistan can perhaps be helpful as a facilitator, as a mediator, to try to help convene talks between the U.S. and China on climate change. Now, one could argue that the U.S. and China don't need any type of mediator to get the two together to sit down and talk. They can do that themselves. Pakistan, which wants to show its ability to play this party of a third party actor as a mediator, perhaps Pakistan can play some type of role in helping facilitate conversations, cooperation between the U.S. and China on climate change.